big booming Irish voice that carries through rooms, and I've spoken in lots of gymnasiums without a microphone before, so that's kind of the way I work with young people is if I need to get their attention, it's really quite easy. All I have to do is raise my voice a little tone upward. And I've been doing this work for almost 25 years. I'm 25 years clean and sober. Clean Sea Network for Youth is about just past its 11th birthday on November 1st. It was started in this community with the help of Doug Horner, and Doug's wife was our first board chair for 3 years. The board chair after Rose was former head of the RCMP for K Division, which is Alberta and a good portion of BC and Saskatchewan, and Don McDermott, who was a fellow Rotarian with Edmonton West, who I met through Rotary when I moved from Edmonton Riverview into Edmonton West Rotary Club. And I hate to say it, but it's not always that every Rotarian lives by the four-way test. I'd say my life was one that wasn't like that. And at moments there are people who don't forgive me for my past. And it's one of those things that's happened along the way. But I happily wear my Rotary vest every day of my working life. And even some days when I'm not working. But that's a rare thing because I'm one of those, I think I traded one addiction for another, service and work. And so the opportunity to score drugs or buy drugs is happening in every community in Alberta. You can find kids on the street here doing it, but not enough of them are doing this. Having the education to make wise choices. And I really believe it creates futures that's really important, and it's priceless. I talk to kids and say, you know, I didn't graduate high school the first time around. I graduated from the Edmonton Remand Center. I took Law 20 and 30. You can wonder why. Well, you know, and I was motivated. The highest marks I ever got in high school, a 92 and a 96. I was 16 years after high school. How many kids have to drop out before we really start to do some stuff around personal development? Every day in schools, not just, oh, we'll do a little bit here in COM by the time they hit high school. There's lots of great teachers out there, and lots of kids get the right messages along the way, but there's a fairly large group that finds school the same way I did. They wake up in the morning, and their first thought is, oh, God, I got to go to school today. And they really don't want to be there. And I've done this in more than 800 schools, some of them as many as 10 times. And the reality is about 90% of kids wake up after grade 7, and that's the way they deal with their thoughts in the morning. So I believe that we need to teach them self-talk, change the way they think about themselves. So my training is a lot of things. So this is for teachers, but is it any different than for any parent or any person in the community who deals with young people? And I'm Youth Services Chair for Edmonton West. I've held that directorship 3 times now. The first time was for 3 years, and I've also been Community Service Director and President, and you know, I've sat through all kinds of things, but the one thing I've always found is I've enjoyed the work I get to do with young people. And through Rotary, I've been involved with Ripen and with this club's members, Judy Kazenikova and what's her name, Sharon Cornelius, I think from Stony. And the things that we've done at Ripen are just amazing. In fact, I've never seen a kid write 4 paragraphs on Facebook before one of our Ripen events, and it was about what we did for him. And changed his life, how he wasn't going to do drugs again. I've been a keynote speaker at Ripen every year for the last 9 years. And Judy and Sharon were the ones who got me involved. And I wasn't new to Rotary. I was already 7 or 8 years in Rotary, but at times people said, well, he's an ex-con. We don't want him talking to our kids. You know, we come from a lot of different places in this world, and not everybody comes from a good place at times. I'm sure the young man that you dealt with was coming from a real hard place. And I deal with young people from all over Parkland County, Spruce Grove and Stony Plain. In fact, this evening I'm doing my regular Thursday night Eco Chat. We call it Peer Club at the Stony Plain Youth Center. And the kids are from here as well as from Stony. Their kids being sent to us by probation and other organizations like the Youth Justice Community. So, Clean Scene's about sharing personal experience along with education. I have a degree in psychology. I'm halfway through a master's in clinical. Got kind of bored with it because I don't want to be a counselor. I mentor. There's a big difference between the two. I can be really directive and pushy and get away with it and tell them what I see in them, whereas a counselor sits back and paraphrases and, oh, I hear this or I hear that. And they don't really move people forward. And I find that mentorship does it. Clean Scene is a partner in the Alberta Mentorship Project. We're the only one that do therapeutic mentorship. We use some different words around our mentorship because it's very directive and it's about addiction. How to understand it, how to understand the way you think, and how to move people forward. This is me in one of the worst days of my life. First day in federal prison was 1980, and I was busy building a very large grow-up north of here that was going to do about $4 million worth of pot every year. I've been trafficking for almost 20 years at that point, fairly steadily in my life, and I ended up in jail for half a pound of cocaine. That was the smallest amount they would have caught me with. If they'd come in 4 days earlier, it would have been about 10 kilos. If you don't know, the Edmonton area absorbs 1,000 kilos a month of cocaine. It absorbs another probably 50 kilos of heroin. And thanks to OxyContin, we have 250 new heroin addicts in the Edmonton area, the largest increase in heroin addiction since the 70s. And these are the sad things that are going on. And it's not just in Edmonton, it's in the bedroom communities of Spruce Grove and Sherwood Park got the worst of it. We're not sure why, but you know, it's the traffickers know where the money is. And that's where they go. It's not 95th Street, 97th Street downtown Edmonton anymore. It's St. Albert, Sherwood Park, Spruce Grove, Stony Plain, Miscue, all of those areas. And the tradesmen are stuck into it just as bad as any other group. Our current reality is between, and I'd say this is now, we do from grade 4 to grade 12. I didn't want to usually talk to the little kids. It scared the crap out of me. How do you talk to them? How do you stop them from telling you that their parents are doing this and that in front of all the other kids in school? You know, because that's the biggest problem is, do you know the difference between telling a story or asking a question? That's what I had to learn about. So I don't talk to 1 to 3 because they'll always out their parents if their parents are using. And that's okay for the school to know, but I don't want every other kid in the school to know what's going on because it causes community problems. But what we know today is there's less than an hour of curriculum-based education around drug addiction and about the damage done by drugs in our schools. Now, I'm not saying that's in every school. Some schools are great. I worked with Tony when he was principal at Fort McMurray Memorial, I think. Composite. And I've worked in a lot of schools where there's a lot of principals that are really interested in seeing education around drugs and understanding yourself. And that's the point I'm involved in. So substance abuse is identified as a lot of things in loss of life. Over 500 dead in a year in Alberta every year from age 6, kids who happen to get into their parents' stash, overdose on it. All the way to age 29. That's what Clean Scene covers from grade 4 to age 29. Now, that's the youth statute federally. My board tried to shrink me down to the 25. But see, once a kid starts using, they don't grow up. They stay stuck. It's that rut. It's the grave we live in when we're using, where we're gradually dying. It's suicide on the installment plan. And kids need to know that. The family dysfunction is the biggest part of it. In fact, it's not the kid that's the problem. Usually it's the parents. because they've broken up. 90% of the kids I mentor come from broken homes. There are very few that haven't done it another way. My trauma that got me involved in drug use was a hospital and a motorcycle accident on Highway 16 near the CFRM TV station in 1966. I became an addict in the hospital. Many of our kids are addicted through doctors and through other things, including dentists. I've been training dentists not to give out 30 Tylenol 3s for a root canal, 3 at maximum. But you know something, the pharmacies won't give you any less than 10. So what is the system out there in pharmacy causing? And it's not just our low achievers. Some of the most brilliant brains are being lost in the world of addiction every day. I thought I was a big dummy. I have an honors degree in psychology with a 91 average at 40. We teach about peer pressure. I'm not sure if I can get this to work, but I would love to. And peer pressure is conscious or unconscious thought being used on somebody else and causing decisions to be made, positive or negative. And we can find lots of positive peer pressure out there, but we can find so much more negative. Which bring about actions and affect. And affective, the way I use it, if you added 3 letters to affect, what do you got? I'm looking for a specific word. Anybody?
Affective.
Affection, sure. Emotion. Affect theory is about the fact that you're born with or God-given, whatever way you want to look at it. I don't like to get into those arguments, or those just take me away from what I need to do. But we know that babies are born with 9 emotions that they can show within seconds of birth. And it's been proven over and over again. And most people didn't believe it at the beginning. But the reality of his research has followed us right through into restorative justice and parts about remorse. Remorse is something that's natural. When you feel remorse, head comes down. You know, it's no different than bowing to that power that's greater than us. The reality is when I felt what I'd done in a bank robbery that I committed, and finally really felt it was very painful. It's still painful. It never should be anything less than that. This feeling that you've done something bad is something kids need to understand. Who teaches them about emotions? Where does this come out in schools? How many of us can identify our emotions? A kid who's had a split family, can they identify abandonment? Abandonment is one of the biggest problems we've got. A kid who feels abandoned at any point in their life will probably become addicted. And that's some of the sad things we see. Now, I'm going to skip to the next slide here. These are the affects that we know of, and the rest are socially learned. We're born with 2 positive affects, and the rest are negatives or neutral. We have one neutral that's startling. You know, you can find them in kids when they're really shocked. You can find them in any adult when they're really shocked about something. But the one that I usually deal with is the shame, humiliation, which is eyes down, head down, eyes averted, the blush, and if you're bald, you know you blush all the way to the top. And it's why your hairs tingle when you're blushing. And I learned a lot of things about it. It is remorse. When I see a cocky young man who's done something wrong, and he's sitting on a chair, feet out in front of him, and glaring at you, and when I can finally get him to lean forward and his head comes down, I know when I've got to him. And I understand that. And getting kids to understand their emotions is really important. This is me when it started. I was already addicted at this point. I'd been in the hospital 8 months. And I came out of that hospital into the beginnings of the summer of love and rock and roll and drugs. And in the summer of 1967, I found lots of drugs as a runaway. And actually, it was the fall, first week of school, and I ran away from home because I walked into a school and Mans told me, "You're going to go home and get your hair cut." And I told him this. I didn't even think about it twice. I used words on him. He dragged me into the office. It turned out to be the principal. And he strapped me what I know today is punishment never worked. Punishment doesn't work, and locking people up and thinking that you can change them by punishment is the worst mistake we make as a society. We have to get them to feel what they've done. And when somebody's telling you, up yours, leave me alone, you can't change me, they're not ready. The only times we should be locking people up is when they're in definite danger to society. And they are few and far between. They're the ones who are committing murders. Drugs, and the problem we've got with drugs needs to take that new direction sooner or later. I don't talk to kids about drug policy. I do with adults, and I'm a drug policy analyst. Right now, if you're watching the world, Portugal and Rotary in Portugal is very much involved in a new project. They've gone across that country and legalized everything. Uruguay is right along with them. We're seeing some countries who are making big differences, and they've seen their crime level drop in a matter of days. And people here don't believe it because we get some people who believe that the only way we can solve it is locking them up. Under the right circumstances, any kid is vulnerable to drugs. But if we're spending that money on educating them instead of jailing them, because the amount of cost of 1 year an inmate in a federal institution right now is $100,000. The remand is probably even a little more than that. It's probably about $120,000 to lock somebody up in there for a year. We just built a new facility for 2,700 remand inmates, and it's already full. Other than 2 units they haven't opened because they aren't finished. This is me when I was first charged, and I walked away with the simple possession of a narcotic. I actually got to 8 to 10 years. The police screwed up. Most of the drug disappeared because it seems the narcotics officers used my big stash of drugs. I was arrested with 13 pounds of hash, that's all. Enough to get this community stoned for a couple of days, everybody. And the reality is I got a year's probation and a fine, and I thought it was a joke. It was the Edmonton City Police that used most of the drugs I've been arrested with to find out who was trafficking. And it's legal and it's done quite regularly. But usually they wait until you're after you're convicted. Somebody screwed up. Didn't realize I wasn't convicted. So I kept going because I had to pay an expensive lawyer. And I kept trafficking, and I really had an attitude against the world around me that everybody else was wrong. And a lot of kids are like that. Screw the world. They have some nasty ways of saying it. I thought back then the guy with the most toys is the biggest winner. It doesn't matter how he gets there. Well, what are we teaching Rotary ethics? Why aren't we teaching it in schools? Ethics needs to be taught everywhere, and it's not just the church's purview. It's everybody's purview. It's all of us teaching kids in this world to live ethically makes that difference. The damage by age 25 was significant. I have alopecia universalis. My hair's come back a long way. About 5 years after I quit using it, my hair started to reappear, but I still have patches. So I've stayed bald, and I've got such a beautiful bald head. What the heck, eh? And so this was me at 25, and I lost my eyebrow, my mustache, and hair on my top of my head in big chunks, and then everywhere else on my body. And what I tell kids is it's no different than chemotherapy. You got cancer, they treat you with chemo, it kills part of your body. Well, what's the first side effect of chemo? Hair loss. And it creates it regularly. And Dr. Tony Fields at the Oncology Center at the Cross Cancer Clinic says 70% of those who get chemo die from the chemo, not from the cancer. And these are extremely dangerous drugs, but so are the street drugs. Who makes them? Who controls what ends up on the streets in our country? No one. And it's continued. If you haven't heard about Crocodile, which came out of Russia, you just need to go on and type it in. It's with a K, K-R-O-D-O-K-I-L. And their skin is rotting off. It's horrible stuff. And why a kid would even consider it seeing those pictures. But we've had lots of bad drugs. Meth. Mrs. Klein made this into the worst thing possible. And the reality is, at the time, meth was a scourge here, and about 6 or 7 years ago, crack cocaine was 10 times worse, but it never got talked about. And that's the problem, is we focus on one or two things and forget about the rest. It's dangerously simple, and these were produced by the RCMP, and I will show you a mistake that's made when we're teaching. We can't be teaching kids through mistakes. We've got to teach them the truth right off the bat every time. No, marijuana has never killed anybody directly, but it's killed lots of people who are driving and using it. And it's caused lots of schizophrenia, and it's caused other problems. And some of them, like gynecomastia, if you don't know what that is, it's male breasts. And there are lots of cases of it, and the kids who usually get it end up, these young boys commit suicide because they're so embarrassed. But right here, you'll see some batteries there. It says lithium batteries. They are not an apparatus. They are a catalyst. And on the previous page right here in this list of chemicals and solvents, because lithium is a chemical that's used to make a catalytic reaction. So even the RCMP don't always get it right. You know, and it's things that we really need to do, is we need to be accurate, no myths. Mrs. Klein said, if you smoke meth, you'll get holes in your brain. Not true. There will be little areas of your brain where there's no firing neurons at the time, and on an fMRI, it will show as black spots, because there's no function happening. And that's what it is, it's a functional MRI. So, as I take you through, this isn't meth I used in the 60s. That little blue bond up there changed the meth so people could vaporize it. Not smoke it, vaporize it. The smoke is all the industrial waste that is left in it when it's made. Because if you actually had pure meth, it would do 1/10 of the damage that street meth does. And so we know that. One of the medical examiners from Iowa came up to speak at a conference, and he kind of blew everybody away in the room. He says, if you gave them all pharmaceutical grade meth, you wouldn't have any of the brain damage that you're getting. And I was kind of surprised about it, because I had this belief that meth, no matter what, did a lot of brain damage. But he has proof of it, and it kind of set off a few people, and of course Alberta Health Services took a really big dislike to it. Some of us just wanted to learn more. And I don't get into that it's right or wrong issue. What I don't want to see is kids using it. And how do we get control over the drug world if we have no control over the source of where it's coming from? Have you thought about that? Because we have no control. Organized crime has all the control. And until we change that picture, we're not going to solve the problem of our kids getting into drugs and having the severe problems that they do. Meth is one of those drugs that's created here, there, and everywhere. And you don't have to go and bring it in from another country, so it causes a lot of grief. South America produces cocaine. It has to be smuggled in, whereas meth can be made right here in somebody's bathtub or backyard, anywhere. Addiction is not just a lot of drug use either. It's, you know, it is a medical, I don't like to call it a disease. I call it a mental disorder. And I put it in that category of mental illnesses that are out there. And then when Alberta Health Services and the province finally decided to put mental health and addictions together, we thought, great, it's about time. The problem is nobody wants to work together. They still want their little silo to do things. One mental illness, the other one addiction. I want them all working hand in hand. This is a big, big problem. By the way, if you didn't know, we just lost our children's mental health person from this community the other day. And this needs to be spoken up against every day. That was the only source for getting a child to help when there's some really severe stuff going on. And I'm adamant. This is a meth addict. Lousy meth that she used. And this is in a 4-year period. By the way, this lady, even the Hells Angels were scared of her because she kneecapped one of them with one of those little metal baseball bats. She worked for me for a couple of years. The police brought her to me. These are $8 million worth of arrests. That's what it costs by the time you figure out what they spent time-wise putting her out of business and getting her out of the drug world. That cost them probably about $15 million. The damage is horrible. And this is the one, the holes in the brain. Those aren't holes, they're just non-functioning parts of the brain. This one over here is a year later, and you know something? Your brain probably looks exactly like it. You have portions of your brain that don't fire at times. They're just not busy. We use 7% to 10% of our brain on any given day, so how many holes do you have in your brain if that was the way you wanted to look at things? These are our most dangerous drugs, right here. And it's not this one, it's that one. Yet it's sold every day in our country. It kills 30 times more than all street drugs combined. Alcohol, 2.78 times, and that's 2 years ago, stats in Alberta. 2.78 times more than all street drugs combined. Yet do we hear a human cry over alcohol the way we do over street drugs? See, we need to take them all as a group and say, we need to reduce the damage being done. Tobacco reduction strategies are the most effective program, and it's through education. Every day, Barb Tarbox had a huge effect. Storytelling is the most evidence-based model, yet we've got federal bureaucrats saying it is not evidence-based. Storytelling is the way we've transmitted religion, everything else for millennia. Why are we saying it's not evidence? And by the way, marijuana is spelled with an H in English. We've been culturalized through the drug world to see it with a J. That's why smoking a J, you know, marijuana spelled that way is Spanish with the J, and it's because most of our pot used to come from Mexico and Colombia in the 60s and 70s. Now it comes from next door, who knows where. BC, Alberta. You can get high-grade marijuana anywhere. And by the way, another myth. High-grade marijuana is, they didn't have it back then. Oh yes, we did, just not as much. And the traffickers didn't care whether it was crap that they were selling or the good stuff. But you had to pay for the good stuff, and about the same prices as today. Users tend to be ritual in behavior when they've been using for any more than a year. So they're like pros, they collect all kinds of shiny objects to do their ritual behavior of using. This is out of one kid's bedroom, and he was 13 years old. So he'd been functionally using for more than 2 years. I love this one. If it doesn't make sense here, why does it make sense when you drive? And kids say, oh, I can drive really good when I'm high. I can read books when I'm high, and I tell you, I could never do it. And I tried reading The Hobbit back in the 60s after smoking a joint, and forget it. I couldn't get through the first 3 paragraphs. I read them 6 or 7 times. The confusion in the brains is there every day. I wouldn't get on that flight. I wouldn't get on a flight with anybody that smoked in the previous 3 days or drank in the previous 2 days, because, by the way, intoxication lasts longer than 24 hours if you've had more than 6 drinks. And many pilots drink 6 drinks the night before you get on a flight. I've worked in lots of places where the alcoholics were there. This is what I was arrested for, and this brings disease into our country in immense ways. I'm running out of time here. This is why, because hygiene is very different in the third world. And drugs like ecstasy are made under horrible circumstances. This is, on this sheet, there's over 150 different drugs. This is why it costs $300,000 to put together a lab to make ecstasy. You need a call it organic chemist. Otherwise, if you make something screwed up, you can kill somebody really easy. This is a drug lab sheet from the RCMP, and this was 2006 and 2007. You hear about Molly today? That's Molly. 7 years ago. create a new name and change. The kids don't realize what they're getting. It's just more crap. Additions of multiple drugs put together. On this sheet, out of 35 tablets, there's 63 drugs mixed in. And you'll find even one like Benadryl in there, which you can buy at any drugstore over the counter. Yeah. Our kids need to know that the damage that this stuff does to health-wise. My nose still bleeds. I haven't used in 25 years. My nose still bleeds every day. That's the reality of the damage I've done. But I'm nowhere near somebody who's not taking care of their nose at the time, because I cleaned mine every night after using vitamin D and did all the things that necessary. Still did the damage, but nowhere near burning my septum out. That's what happens to many of them. There's that same picture. That was 1980. 81 coming out. 86 back in. This time 3 armed robberies. Convicted of 1, guilty of all 3, and guilty of 10 more. Not including the ones on drug traffickers, because I was robbing everybody at that. These are the tools of my destruction. And when you want to know in a school how many people know about drugs, all you have to do, what do you know about shrooms, kids? And when the hands come up, you'll find anywhere from 60 to 90% you go to school, and you quite easily know exactly what's going on and what the real problem is in each school. This is what they usually get. A kid in Cochrane was busted with 150 pounds of this in the back of the truck with a tailoring out. Not a very smart drug trafficker, but it turned out he was a high school dropout. He was making his living on trafficking. Mushrooms depict in Canmore, this mushroom, and it's poisonous. And cumulative poison, if you ate enough, it can kill you. This is our veterinary stuff, and this has been used to rape girls. It knocks them out, and you don't remember anything. Same with GHB, which is a floor stripper. So things that shouldn't be in the drug world are there. And plants, and the old LSD, and prisons. And what did I learn in prison the first time? How to commit armed robberies the second time. And the guys that I've lived with, out of these 2 pictures, there's 3 of us alive today. How many sisters, fathers, brothers, uncles have to die before we really do something about this problem? And one thing that changes it is education. I got hope in prison that I could do something more. And I found the success cycle, which is staying clean, making good choices, staying in school and choosing positive friends, and graduating. You know, and Gray was just about 40 when I finally got going in university. The challenges are education and prevention get the least money, about $5 million a year in Alberta, nowhere near enough. And if you don't know, Rotary has ASAP, Advocacy for Substance Abuse Prevention, and I'm a committee member along with Ross Tyson, and we have 15 members. We need to make this a priority across Rotary as it's begun internationally and started at the Portugal conference, and we've started a world committee on this. Harm reduction gets nothing. There's one charity in Edmonton, Human Youth, that does harm reduction. And he gets the bad stick all the time from everybody around. Treatment gets about $120 million last year in Alberta from public purse. There may be a lot of private purse money going into it as well that we can't measure. Enforcement gets $3.47 billion. If we took $0.1 billion and put it into education and prevention, we could reduce treatment and jailing very easily by a huge percentage. But we need to get there. And I run way over time. The most effective is prevention and education. Education is where we need to be. And we need to be in every school every year with a repetitive message. How else do we learn? We have to hear it many, many times to get things through some of our so-called thick skulls. You know, and I used to think of myself as a big dummy. Yet it turns out I can be an honor student. It's all in the way we think about ourselves and the feelings we have about is health and health costs. By the way, we have 80,000 cases of liver disease, HAP-C. I'm one of them, 42 years. I'm still alive because I quit using it. Yeah, and I see my specialist twice a year. He happens to come from Stony Plain. His name is Dr. Lawrence Burrell. He's a famous, world-famous hepatologist. And he's screaming out there that this is an epidemic and the government won't say anything. Climb up. Criminal record, job loss. Many tradesmen who aren't working in Fort McMurray who should be, instead of bringing in people from other countries. And how many of these beautiful young people have to die before we do something? This little girl was in the movie Through a Blue Lens. She came off the bus in the movie, beautiful little girl, and at 16 she died of her third heart attack from meth and crack and living on the street. It's a horror story. East Hastings, well, we've got some real sad mental illness going on in our world through addiction and self-hatred. Our evaluation is now, we're actually over 300,000, because this is a year-old slide, and 500 schools since I started Clean Scene in 12 years. We should be in 1,200 schools, and we should be up to 290,000 kids a year in Alberta. It'd take 10 former addicts to carry that message strongly. What would that cost? $1.5 million for the whole province. And we could put 10 people who have a hard time getting a job into a career and a future. I'm getting old in this. I've been doing this for a long, long time. For the first time in handcuffs and shackles and a body belt. And I'll tell you, that class is never forgotten. Not that it was a good way to do it, because I don't believe scared straight words. You have to get them to face to face, heart to heart. You can do it up to about 250 students at a time, and it needs to be done. By the way, Bruce Grove, Comp and I have a continuing, Mary Stewart there brings me in every year. We've been doing it for 8 years here in the community. We're successful if we save one kid per presentation or even per day. If we did that, we'd be doing something absolutely fantastic. Because that'd be 365 kids in a year if you save from something severe. We know we've done far more than that. I've got lots of stats. And we actually did an evaluation of 6,800 kids in 12 schools in 8 school divisions. And the stats are those kids, 96% said it should be in every school in Alberta every year. We asked them 12 questions. We were only interested in 3. And those 2 to 3 questions came up with 92% on the low end and 96% on the high end. We know that. We're not a highly evaluated organization, but we know what we can do. And we know what we have been doing. I have more than 15,000 letters and emails from kids saying, "You changed my life." That's a lot of kids. That was just in the first 5 years. Now they just Facebook us. And I'm not a Facebook person, but I have to function in that. I know I've gone overtime, and most of you have to get back to work. Please, your club has been very involved. If you know people that can sponsor us, this is my second year with my pay. I don't quit because I believe in what I do. And I know if I save one kid, I've done something really worthwhile. I won't give up. And I intend to carry this message until I can get out of the chair. Even then I'll still have a mic if somebody can roll me in. I got my health problems, but I'm not going to quit. My wife says I need a paycheck, but that's the fight you usually have at home. How do you get it done? I will continue to do what I do till I can. And as long as, and I'll tell you, your club and your club members, John Moken particularly, has donated for many, many years through Inland and Heidelberg. So I thank your members wife, Lynn, has been a big supporter. I just appreciate what Rotary does